Hey guys, welcome back to another video. So today I'm going to be running through the following topics with you all. And while you digest that and decide whether you want to hear it all or maybe navigate to a particular area, I want to begin this video with a bit of a thank you. Thank you for the kind words, messages and support this channel has received over the last 2 months. It's massively growing, so thank you so much. But some of you are still not subscribed. And I would also kindly ask, if you are subscribed or you're new to this channel, then maybe smash that like button because it massively helps the algorithm and the YouTube gods maybe recommend my video elsewhere. Now, one of the reasons I actually wanted to discuss this video and start by thanking you all was because I actually asked this question to try and get a little bit of insight in relation to the people that watch these kind of videos. And thankfully you responded, as you can see. You see, one of the things I recognize is being involved in property for some time now, I sometimes forget the things I once wasn't sure about either. For example, mortgages. And what I mean here is mortgages in regards to investment properties. And for this video, that's what we're going to be looking at. We're going to be looking at solely buy-to-lets, and we're going to compare the pros and cons of interest mortgages against capital repayment ones. Also, luckily for you, as I try and do with all my videos, I will give a real life experience as well, having used both of them throughout my property journey, i.e. an interest only and a capital repayment. So let's get started. Let's start with some definitions. Now, a capital repayment, as you can see here, which is probably the one that many of you who are new to investing are more familiar with, and what the majority of mortgages are for residential homes, is basically a mortgage where the borrower, i.e. yourselves, you repay the whole borrowed sum over the mortgage term. For example, if you borrow £100,000 for 25 years, over the 25 years, providing you make your payments, you will have paid off the mortgage debt and own that home without any sort of mortgage. And as a result of this, the monthly repayments include a proportion which repays the borrowed capital, as well as a payment for the interest as well of that particular loan. You don't get it for free, sadly. Now, I actually took this out on my first buy-to-let, and I'll explain why shortly. Next up, we have interest-only mortgages. Now, interest-only mortgages is something that I use a lot more today. An interest-only mortgage is a type of mortgage where a borrower, i.e. yourselves or myself, is required to pay only the interest of the loan for the duration of the mortgage period. So, using the same example, you have a £100,000 mortgage over 25 years. Simply put, you'll only be paying the interest every single month on that for the 25 years. At the end of it, however, you're still liable to pay down that £100,000 mortgage. Now, if you're new to property and this is the first time you've ever heard of it, you're probably thinking, what kind of person would just choose to pay a mortgage for 25 years and not have any of the debt taken away? Well, this kind of person, but maybe yourselves too, so just stay tuned because it may give you some more benefits that you may not have heard of. Because that thought that you may have had there is a thought I had as well, and hopefully by the end of this video you'll at least have a different perspective to at least entertain the possibility of maybe mixing up your portfolio or completely changing it, because initially it made, well, little sense to me as well. Now, what I want to do now is quickly run a comparison before I explain the rationale behind why you may actually opt for one of them as opposed to the other one, because you're probably thinking, well, the other one just sounds really dumb. But a lot of this depends on your own personal circumstances as well. So make sure you stay to the end because there's some incredible pros and cons that will definitely, I promise you, make you think a little bit different. So let's run the example. Now let's say we have a house for £100,000 this time, but we want to take that out on a buy-to-let mortgage, i.e. buy it to rent it out to somebody else. And we take it on a 75% LTV, loan to value mortgage. Now let's just assume the average rent will be £600 per calendar month and it'll be self-managed by ourselves, the landlord. And we're going to also put away 10% for voids and maintenance, just to make it a bit more real life. Now at this point, I can't really deduct anything for tax purposes as I don't know your particular circumstances. So this is maybe something that you may need advice on if you really want to take this forward. And finally, for this particular example, what we're going to do is we're going to assume it's over a 25-year term and on a 3% mortgage interest rate, and just use generic figures for the fees. Now, if I run the numbers up, we can obviously see this, and this table will summarize the differences between both methods of borrowing for this particular asset. Now, I know what you're thinking. Instantly, you can see there is a significant difference between the cash flow per month, as it's almost double. And although you and I know that in 25 years time, the interest only column, should that ever be your choice and all other things remain equal over the 25 years, you will still be liable to pay that mortgage debt of $75,000. But here's where things get a little bit interesting. You see, I'm an investor first and foremost, and I want to make my money work as hard as possible for myself. I want to ensure that I've put it in the best place for it to basically grow as quick as possible, but as safe as possible too. So I'm always looking at the ROI. And just to briefly explain it, the ROI for this is the initial amount that you've put in, how long does it take you to get that back out through the property generating income? Now obviously this is coming through the rent, and we're going to ignore capital appreciation just for now. Now you can see that one of them, you get it back in half the time. And I can already feel the questions arising, which is, well, really? Is that really putting it to best use? Because if you waited just another 6 years, you would actually have all your capital back that you employed, and that mortgage is actually paying off the debt. So why not do that? And you're absolutely right with what you're saying. But as an investor, alongside with wanting to make my money work as hard as possible, I have to also look at the opportunity cost of my decisions. For example, an extra 6 years and £169 less every month if I choose the repayment route would mean my portfolio building would take that little bit longer. You see, the thing that often scares me when I first got into investing in property was, where do I find that lump sum at the end of the mortgage term if I opt for interest only? But very quickly I realized there's two simple things that you can do should that ever arise or you have that concern, especially if you don't have the money there. So let's quickly run through those. The first is that if you don't have that money available right there and then, you can literally sell the property. So just like maybe 12 months before, try and sell that property, because historically we know that house prices rise and you can probably settle that debt and likely even make a surplus too. The second is you can refinance it to the new market value, hopefully a higher one, and take out another mortgage and go again. Obviously this depends on your age. But what I would personally like to stress and add is that you ideally want to ensure that during this time, the £169 or whatever amount that you're saving each month by opting for the interest only, you invest it and make it work for you on either a side hustle or either back into property for growing your portfolio, which is exactly what I did when I first started to bootstrap my property journey, is allow those £169 to alleviate some of the stresses of my life to really help grow my business. For example, just a few of these properties, and let's just say for argument's sake £150 is what you're saving by choosing interest only. You could probably give up a day or two of work to concentrate more on your property business, to make more viewings, to potentially get more deals. So it can definitely work. And what I want to do now is just run through my examples, because this is a perfect segue for explaining my actual choices for choosing both of them at certain times in my career. You see, when I first decided to go full-time into property, an interest-only mortgage allowed me to not really require a full-time job and free up a lot of my time and stress, because this game can be lonely and it's quite difficult at times as well. So I kind of became minimalistic, although, well, I wasn't really that person who had one t-shirt and one bowl, which they had all their meals from. But I definitely became better at managing my money, and apart from a few savings, all my money went back into assets or into my business that I was working in. However, when I wasn't full-time in property and I really had no desire to become an investor, and this was around 25, as I had a great job in London, I threw it on a repayment mortgage. You see, the opportunity cost there of actually having less money to spend by choosing a repayment was that I'd basically spend less money on vodka on weekends and buying designer clothes. So it kind of made a lot of common sense to get the asset paid and calm my spending down. But now, as I could benefit from the lifestyle of a bit more freedom and grow my portfolio quicker, it makes more sense to kind of go towards the interest only, but only for this moment in time for my journey, as it gives me the flexibility to really choose where I put my money. Now, will it stay like this forever? Probably not. But that's one of the reasons I want to document it on this channel, because I have a plan for 5, 10 and 15 years. That will make sense if YouTube is still a thing then and you haven't got bored out of your brains from hearing my voice. So, to conclude, I want to conclude with some advantages and disadvantages and pros and cons of choosing an interest-only mortgage as opposed to a repayment one. As you may have different circumstances to myself, so it's important that we get all of them out, because you may just want to invest just to have a house paid off, or you may really want to enhance and grow your portfolio, so this should hopefully help. So let's look at the pros first of an interest only first. The first is you have more flexibility of where your money goes, as your monthly payments are significantly lower. The second is you don't have to stay here. You can always move your position towards a repayment mortgage somewhere down the line. And this I may even consider myself one day. Next up, you have inflation. Inflation can actually eat away at your debt. So actually the debt of a £75,000, using that example, will actually be a lot less in the future. So this is great in terms of paying down debt in real terms. Next up, you still benefit from capital growth, as you are only liable for the mortgage and the growth in the house prices is effectively yours. Also, some mortgages allow you to overpay without penalties, which is absolutely brilliant. So if things start to move well for you, you can always massively benefit your own financial situation by overpaying. But let's look at the cons as well, because it's not all roses and rainbows. Unless you utilize that cash flow you benefit from to maybe work for yourself or free up your time, it's going to be a poor investment. you also need to be savvy enough to know where you're going to put that money, or at least have a good enough excuse to say why you're not going for a repayment, i.e. is it freeing up your time, for example? Can that time be put to better use elsewhere? Next up, prices could actually plummet. Yes, they do go down from time to time. So selling or refinancing in 25 years may not be as feasible as you may have initially thought. So that's kind of where I want to end this video. Hopefully I haven't gone on too long, and hopefully you found all of this useful as well, because I know this was a common question I was getting asked quite a lot about what should I be doing. Now, of course, I recommend you speak with a mortgage broker and your tax advisor, because this is something that you really need to think about. It's not something that, hey, the anxious investor has basically used interest only, so I'm going to do it. You really need to think about what you need for yourself. And of course, if you've stuck around and this is maybe your first time, consider subscribing. Of course, everyone else, smash that like button. It massively, massively helps the channel, and I truly, truly appreciate it. And as always, any questions, please drop them down below. Now let's roll those bloopers. I want to begin with a bit, you see me being involved, you see one of the things, you see the thing, you see, but when I was